Hello, welcome to this AWS webinar. My name's Ian Massingham. I'm a technical evangelist with Amazon Web Services based in Europe. I'm going to be your host for this session today, which is a masterclass session focusing on Amazon WorkSpaces. And the masterclass series, these particular webinars are intended to be a technical deep dive to take you a little bit beyond the basics on one specific AWS service. And obviously we're going to be looking at WorkSpaces today. I'm going to show you how to get things done with WorkSpaces and explain a little bit more about how things work with this service. Take about 45 minutes and intend to broaden your knowledge during that period. Now we do have another webinar series which we're running at the moment, which is called the Journey Through the Cloud. If you're interested in more of a solution orientated look at how you might apply a different range of AWS services to one particular set of business challenges or IT challenges that you might have, why don't you take a look at that Journey Through the Cloud series of webinars and check those out. They're available for you in the links panel that you can see in the webinar interface right now. And other things that you should also be able to see within that webinar interface, just by way of a bit of housekeeping before we get started with the content. You can see a materials download panel in the files panel, which should be at the bottom right of the interface. If you want to grab a PDF of the materials that we've used during today's session, then please download those from the files panel. You can access those right now. After the session, you will be mailed a follow-up note, and in that note there will be a link to a SlideShare URL, which will also contain a copy of the slides from this webinar today. And you'll also be mailed a link to a recording of this webinar on YouTube. So if you want to re-watch the webinar or share either the video or the materials with any colleagues that you think might be interested, then please do that. You'll also see in the interface for the webinar today a Q&A panel, and if you do have any questions about WorkSpaces, or for that matter more generally about AWS, I'm going to be live on the webinar today attempting to answer those questions during the session. And if there's any questions that I can't answer, in fact those that I do answer will also provide a follow-up email to you after the session today, which will include an answer to your question as well as some further references if that's appropriate, where you might be able to read some more resources and learn a little bit more about the question that you've asked. So please do ask any questions that you might have during the session today. We'll answer those during the session, and if we don't cover them, or if we do cover them for that matter, we will follow up with email for you as well. The last thing we'll do during the session today is show you some additional resources where you can learn a little bit more about the topic we're covering. And we'll also show you some social media accounts that you can use to stay up to date with AWS more generally. And you can see those social media accounts in the links panel right now as well. So if you do want to follow AWS on Twitter or AWS_UKI on Twitter, keep up to date with what we're up to here in AWS generally and in the UK and Ireland area specifically, then please use those social media accounts that you can access via the links panel, and we'll show you again at the end to stay up to date with what we're up to. Okay, that's enough housekeeping. Let's get on with the topic today, which is Amazon WorkSpaces. So this is a managed desktop computing service which runs in the AWS cloud. It's really intended to be a very simple way for IT administrators to provision cloud-based desktops and make those available to their users. It supports a wide variety of different client devices, which we'll talk about in more detail during the session today, and it offers a high-quality cloud desktop experience for any number of users. Just last week we were at AWS reInvent in Las Vegas, our global user conference, and we heard during the keynote there from large organisation Johnson & Johnson. They've got an intent to roll out 25,000 WorkSpaces desktops over the course of the next year and move obviously a significant proportion of their workforce onto this cloud-based desktop delivery model that Amazon WorkSpaces provides. So it operates at very large scale and can be integrated with existing desktop management tools that you might operate. The kind of basic tenets of the service really are, as we've said, it's very simple to use, so it makes it very easy for you to manage your desktop computing infrastructure. Like all AWS services, it eliminates the need for upfront investment and removes the complexity of maintaining, patching and managing what in this case would be a large physical desktop environment or a pretty complex virtual desktop infrastructure solution. And you'll probably know that many data center VDI solutions, virtual desktop infrastructure solutions, come with pretty esoteric hardware. You may need to invest, if you were building this yourself, in things like all-flash arrays or other kind of, let's call it edge technology that might not be common in the server-based computing environment. And that's why it can be very hard for organizations to implement these VDI solutions themselves in their own data centers, and one of the reasons that Amazon WorkSpaces could be such a good tool to use for that kind of use case. It has support for multiple devices, so you can access WorkSpaces from a choice of devices, including laptops, tablets, and Zero clients. And as I said, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail later. It offers a secure and available platform, so each user can access persistent storage in the AWS cloud, and you can control where that data is stored, obviously centralizing it and keeping it off client devices, and therefore making it more secure and more protected. Simple to integrate workspaces with a pre-existing corporate directory. You can also create a cloud-based directory, which we'll show you in a demo in a few minutes, specifically for workspaces. So you can use either existing enterprise credentials seamlessly with workspaces, or you can use a new cloud-based directory if you wish to do that. We've already said there's no upfront investment, so simple monthly pricing. We'll give you some details on that again in a few minutes. And lastly, you can choose from a variety of different software and hardware bundles offering different amounts of CPU, memory and storage. It enables you to match your workspace's environment to the requirements that you might have in terms of budget, software bundle that you may need, and of course the level of performance that you want to give to your users. So you have some flexibility around the bundle that you might choose. Actually, that's going to be the second thing that we cover on the agenda today, a little bit more detail around those bundles. Before we do that, we're going to cover use cases. So what are the typical scenarios where organizations would find value in using Amazon Workspaces? We're then going to talk about provisioning after we've covered bundles. We'll talk about securing workspaces within Amazon Virtual Private Clouds or VPCs. We'll talk about Active Directory integration, integrating workspaces with existing Active Directory infrastructure. We'll talk about Amazon Zocalo Sync and how you can synchronize files, documents across workspaces and other devices to enable you to either keep a backup or a secondary copy of your information in the AWS cloud and make it easy to access that when you need to. And we'll lastly talk about Workspaces golden images in a little bit of detail. And then we'll give you some more resources, as we've said, and then we'll wrap up the session for today. So, Amazon Workspaces use cases. What are the common scenarios in which customers might opt to use Amazon Workspaces? And the 6 of them we've identified as being prevalent. One is mobile device access. So you want to access your desktop from a mobile device like an iPad, a Kindle Fire, or an Android tablet. Workspaces provides you with that. It provides a mobile client component that runs on those 3 different device types and enables you to access a Windows desktop environment from a tablet, which can be useful if you're mobile or if you've got just a very small number of Windows applications that you need to access in order to fulfill your role. Secure workspaces. So workspaces can help you meet stringent compliance requirements, delivering a managed desktop within the familiar security framework that AWS provides, and of course within the accreditation and compliance standards that AWS complies with, such as the PCI DSS standard or the ISO 27001 standard or the ISO 9001 quality standard, all of which are very applicable to customers that are using Amazon Web Services here in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. So you may find that security is a quick way for you to validate and protect the security of your desktop environment. Thirdly, remote employees. So this is employees that might be working in off-site locations such as home-based employees. You can provide secure access to applications for users without needing to store your data locally in an environment that might not be as physically secure as one of your own office buildings or one of your own data centers. So there's a strong use case there for people that want to use applications remotely in less secure physical environments. And fourthly, developers. You may want to provision workspaces for developers and install the tools that they need to build applications for your business. The source code wouldn't be stored on their devices, which can help keep your intellectual property safe. And of course, you might combine that with remote development services, such as offshore development delivered, say, for example, from India or some other lower cost labor location where there's a lot of expertise in software development. You could provide a secure remote capability for those developers to work on your software remotely whilst you lock the environment in a way which complies with your security policies. Students, for training organizations or in an academic environment, it's very simple to provision desktop environments just for the course or semester with specific resources within them, and obviously clean those down and recreate them at the beginning of the next course or semester when you have your next tranche of students coming through your pipeline. And then lastly, seasonal workers, where you may only need workspaces, desktop environments for a short period of time. It might be seasonal work which is cyclical. So for example, a particular time of the year when you're doing tax filing, for example, or something like that, you may need to have significant numbers of seasonal workers during that period. Or you may have project work where you have short-term projects. You need desktops for that project, but you don't want the expense and complexity of deploying those physical desktops just for that short period of time. you can use Amazon WorkSpaces for that kind of use case as well. So those are the 6 most common use cases that we see for this Amazon WorkSpaces service. And as we said, there are a variety of different bundles that you can offer to users that might have different software or performance requirements. And those bundles are quickly summarized here. So we have a couple of value bundles with and without the incremental software that is offered in the Plus bundle. So those have 1 virtual CPU, 2 gigs of RAM, and 10 gigabytes of persistent storage. And the software bundles you can see on the right hand side. One comes with basic software, and the other one comes with Microsoft Office Professional, either 2010 or 2013, as well as Trend, Business Security Services, Adobe Reader, and the rest of the software that's bundled in the value pack. Now in the standard bundles, you have the same software options, but you have more system resources. So 2 CPUs, 4 gigabytes of memory, and 50 gigabytes of persistent storage. And then in the performance bundle, again, the same software bundles, but here you have 2 CPUs, 7.5 gigabytes of memory, and 100 gigabytes of persistent storage. So these are powerful systems that are suitable for power users that might be undertaking analysis, computation, or for example, mathematical or data management services on those desktops. They've got quite a lot of power that's made available for the users. And the other half of the couplet, of course, as well as the bundle that you have in the Amazon Web Services cloud that's running your workspaces environment, is the client devices that you're going to be accessing from remotely. And you have 3 categories of client device that are supported. Desktop or laptop operating systems from Microsoft Windows 7 and Windows 8, and from Apple Mac OS X, so 10.8.1 and above. A family of tablet devices, the iPad 2 and Retina iPad from Apple. You need to have iOS 7 and above to use the iPad client. The Kindle Fire HDX and Kindle HD7 from Amazon. And we support on the Android tablets, Samsung and Nexus tablets today. Obviously, a variety of other tablets will work with the service as long as you're running Android 4.2 or above. And if you have more formal support requirements for non-Samsung or Google Nexus tablets, then please let us know via the Contact Us form or the forum for Workspaces. And we will take a look at providing more formal support for other Android tablets if we have significant demand for that at the moment. At the moment, the demand is principally around Samsung and the Nexus tablet family, and that's what we support formally. And then the third category is reasonably new. We recently announced support for PCOIP 0 clients, those that have the Teradata Terra2 chipset, and you can find full details about supported 0 clients if you follow the URL that you can see on the bottom left of that slide. That will take you over to the Teradata website, and there's a product finder there which shows all of the supported hardware 0 clients for Amazon WorkSpaces. So if you do want to use 0 clients or potentially invest in 0 clients for this service, then take a look at the URL that you can see there, and you can find full details on the clients that are supported just there, and obviously make sure you're buying devices that are supported with this service. Okay, regional availability. So we're currently live, and Workspaces is available in 5 AWS regions around the world. As you'll probably know, regions comprise multiple availability zones, and an availability zone is one or more physical facilities or data centers. And this construct is supported in Workspaces as the same way it is for other Amazon Web Services like, for example, EC2 or the RDS Relational Database Service. And we'll show you later in the session today how you can distribute your workspaces across a VPC, across availability zones within a VPC, and take advantage of the security and availability features that offers. But of course, the global and regional distribution of the Workspaces service means that you can connect your clients to a Workspaces environment that offers low latency and consistently good performance. And we would recommend that you do that. So if you're using or offering Workspaces desktops to users in the European Union, then you should use the region in the EU West 1 region in Ireland to do that. And you'll get good and consistent performance with low latency for those users. North America, you have 2 options in Oregon or in US East 1 in Virginia. We have the service in Tokyo in Japan, as you can see there with the Japanese region, and we also have the service live today in Sydney, Australia. So no matter where in the world your users are located, there will be a Workspaces region that offers appropriate network performance for those users, and we recommend you use one which the region which offers the lowest latency for the users that you're servicing. The pricing for workspaces varies by region, as is the case with the vast majority of AWS services. And you can find full details at aws.amazon.com/workspaces/pricing that you can see there at the bottom left. And this will show you a tab for each of the regions. Here we're showing the EU Ireland regional pricing just as a representative example of pricing for workspaces. And you can see that pricing is monthly. So your value pack without the enhanced software bundle pack that you would get with the Value Plus would cost $27 per month right now. If you want the additional software, Microsoft Office Professional 2010 or 2013, the Trend software, Trend security services rather, you're looking at an additional $15 per month per desktop for those additional software components. And obviously then you can scale up your workspaces bundle to standard or performance with the incremental charges that are shown there. So the standard would be $37 without the software bundle, and the performance would be $64 without that software bundle today. And charges are prorated for the remainder of the first month. So if you start your service midway through the month, your charges will be prorated. Subsequent months are billed for the entire month, and Workspaces is not eligible for the AWS free usage tier, but of course you can test it for the cost of a single workspace for just 1 month. So you can have a play with Workspaces and establish whether or not it might be good for your use case from as little as $27 per workspace per month. So a very cost-effective service. Let's take a look now at provisioning Amazon Workspaces. And we're going to walk you through the provisioning activity that you would go through in order to create a workspace for a user. The first thing you're going to do in common with all AWS service, obviously, is start from the AWS console. And we're logged in here, and you can see that Workspaces is a service in the same way that EC2, RDS, or Elastic Beanstalk are services available under the Enterprise Applications header, which you can see bottom right of the console in this particular screenshot highlighted in orange. And if you click that, you'll be taken to this creation screen. And here you're looking at the launch process. So we'll select Workspaces and we'll hit Launch Workspaces. And at this point, we don't have a directory that our users are going to live in. So we'll be kicked back or sent back to the Select Directory dialog. And we're going to create a new directory here by clicking on that link. And that will then ask us to set up a directory. And we're going to use simple AD in this first example, although we will come back later to talk about the AD connector, which allows you to connect to your own on-premises Microsoft Active Directory. In this case, we're going to use the simple AD, which is a managed Samba 4 Active Directory compatible server hosted on the AWS cloud. And this is what's going to hold the users that are going to be using our workspaces. So we'll click that Create Simple AD button. And then we'll be asked to enter some details about our directory. And this goes in the top part of the dialog that you can see here, where it says Enter Directory Details. And at the bottom, we're going to enter some VPC details. So we'll populate that with some details, entering an organization name, a directory DNS name, a NetBIOS name for our directory, as well as an administrator password, which we'll then confirm. And we're going to put our workspaces in this particular example into a pre-created VPC. And we'll come back later and talk about VPCs, but we're going to be creating our workspaces across a couple of subnets that exist in the EU West 1A and EU West 1B availability zones. And you can see the CIDR addressing for those subnets there. And this is going to exist in a pre-existing VPC, as I've already said, and we'll click Continue here. This just shows you that there are some restrictions here. So the NetBIOS name cannot exceed 15 characters, and the password has some strength requirements that are predefined. So we're trying to enforce good password management for the directory management or directory administration password here. So we failed to meet those criteria, and we'll be warned about that, and we'll have to then update the details that are in our directory in order to make sure that we meet those criteria. So we've now got a NetBIOS short name which meets the criteria of being less than 15 characters in length. And we changed our password to make it a little bit more complex and meet the password rules that are set there. And if we click Continue again, we'll then be taken off to review and confirm the details of the simple AD that we've just created, the VPC that we're going to drop our workspaces into, and the specific subnets within that VPC that we're going to use. And if we click Create Simple AD at this point, we'll be taken to this Creating the Directory dialog. This takes about 5 to 10 minutes to do, so you do have a little bit of a wait here, which is the main reason we're not doing a live demo today, because there's a couple of different points in the demo where you need to wait. But through these screenshots, you can see the process perfectly adequately. So you got to wait a few minutes. You can click refresh, and eventually clicking refresh, you'll see this, which is that your directory is active. but it's not registered. And at this point, you can then click back onto Workspaces in the left-hand dialog, and you'll be taken back into your Workspaces creation screen. You can now launch Workspaces. And now we've got a directory, we'll be asked to select it. So we have, if we had multiple directories, they would appear in that drop down. In this particular instance, we've created just that one directory called Masterclass Webinar Demo.amazonworkspaces.com. We're going to enable Amazon Zocalo for all users in this directory. And we're going to talk about precisely what that is later on in the session today. But we're going to enable that for users in this directory and click Next. And now we're asked to enter the details of the users that we wish to create our workspaces for. And as we're creating users here in an empty directory, we cannot select any users from a pre-existing directory, which you can see in the center of this screenshot here. We're going to be working in the top part, entering the details of our users, creating usernames, which will be used for logon, and then entering the first, last name and the email addresses of the users that we wish to create our workspaces for. And you can create as many as you want. We're just going to create one in our particular demo scenario here. Hit on that Create Users button, and that user will drop down to the bottom of the screen, and you'll see that we're then in a position to click Next and create a workspace for our user. So when we launch our workspace, in this next dialog, we're asked to select the bundle that we want to use, and you can see we have a set of radio options there that we can select on the left-hand side of that scrolling dialog at the top of the screen. We're going to have Standard Plus with Office 2013 for this representative user. Give him 2 CPUs, 4 gigabytes of memory, and 50 gigs of persistent storage. And we're going to have the Standard Plus bundle with Office, obviously, so you can see that on the right-hand side, as well as confirmation of the charging that's going to apply to this particular bundle. We'll click Next, and we're then once again asked to review and confirm, and we will click the Launch Workspaces button at this point, and our workspaces are now being launched. It can take up to 20 minutes to launch a workspace, and the best notification option you have really is twofold. You can click the refresh button that you can see highlighted here, and if you do that the first time, you'll see that your workspaces are in pending state. So my workspace here, my Standard Plus with Office 2013 bundle in organization name Masterclass Webinar Demo, is now in a pending state. I'll be waiting for up to 20 minutes for that to be created. And maybe the best notification that the workspace is ready for use is that an email is going to arrive in the mailbox of the user that you've set up, as long as you've specified the correct email address at that point, of course. And this allows the user to self-complete the rest of the provisioning process. And you'll see 2 things here that I've pixelated because they are security sensitive. The first is my user profile. There's a URL there. I click that and I can download a Workspaces client using that link. And you'll see below that there is a registration code, and we're instructed that we need to launch the client and enter that registration code, which is also pixelated in black, in order to register our client with our particular Workspaces environment. So if you click that URL that you see, you'll be taken first of all to a web page that asks you to finalize your credentials. So please set your Masterclass Webinar Demo credentials, and at this point the user themselves will enter their user password, which will of course be stored in the directory. So the administrators never see or set the user passwords that are in use for individual users. Then you will go to the download and install a Workspaces client web page that you can see second down in that 4 set of screenshots that are there. So we're going to have, in this instance, download the Mac client. And once you've downloaded and installed that Mac client and executed it for the first time, you'll be asked to enter the registration code provided in your welcome email. This will associate your client with your particular Workspaces environment. So I will type in or copy and paste in at that point the registration code from my email that you can see here in part 2 of the instructions that we have. Once I've done that, I'll be asked to log in to my workspace using the credentials that I set in part 1 of this process by following the link, once again, that you can see at the top of the email here. And at that point, the Workspaces client will make a connection and you'll be presented with something that looks like this. So this is a running workspace sitting inside a window on my macOS desktop and presenting to me the Windows 2008 desktop experience together with the Office software that you can see pre-installed on the taskbar there at the bottom of the screen, as well as some of the utilities such as Firefox, Adobe Reader, the Amazon WorkSpaces sync client, and one of the utility also, which is to provide feedback about the service. So that's a WorkSpaces environment up and running. That's the process that you go through to create that, and the user experience that the user would have at the end of the process in finalizing their setup. Now, I did say we would come back and talk about VPC. So this is a particularly important component of using WorkSpaces. What is a VPC? Maybe that's the first thing to talk about. So the Virtual Private Cloud, or Amazon VPC, allows complete control over your network environment. So you're able to set up your own network topology inside the AWS cloud with your own IP address ranges, your own subnets, your own configuration of route tables, network gateways, and for that matter, other network services that you might run in the form of virtual appliances. And you have a lot of configuration control over this, so you can build a very strong security posture in the AWS cloud by using the features of the VPC, and or replicate a security posture that you might have in-house and integrate your VPC network both with the internet using internet gateway services and back into your own network using either AWS Direct Connect or a VPN service to connect to your VPC back into your corporate network. Now, this can be a little bit complex, maybe for very new users to AWS. So the first time you connect to the Workspaces Management Console, you won't quite see the process that we've run through today. You will see a wizard-driven approach that will help you create a new VPC with 2 associated subnets and an internet gateway that you can use to host your workspaces, that will contain your workspaces essentially, and also create you a directory to contain your users using that same wizard-based approach. So you're going to see something a little bit simpler than what you've seen today the first time you use the service. And what that simple user experience will deliver to you in terms of AWS VPC resources is this. So you'll be given, or created for you rather, will be 2 public subnets in 2 different availability zones. That will be where your directories and your workspaces are created. And those public subnets will be connected to the internet with an internet gateway. So that's a very, very simple network topology for provisioning workspaces in a way which will allow you to test and try and become familiar with them without having the complexity and power, incidentally, of integrating them with a fully fledged VPC construct. I would advise that you take a look at the VPC documentation that you can see linked off the bottom of that slide to learn a little bit more about VPCs and how you can use them to build more complex network topologies. And it's this gateway, this internet gateway, that will allow, in this particular scenario, allow your workspaces to access resources that are located out on the internet. Now, a more complex topology, and one that you might use if you wish to build workspaces in production that might be integrated with services that are pre-existing inside your own environment, might be to use this 4 subnet model, where you would have 2 public subnets. The public subnets in this particular example do not contain workspaces and are not where workspaces will be created. They contain network address translation, or NAT instances. And those are able to provide a secure access mechanism for workspaces to access the internet in a controlled manner. And we'll explain how you can do that in a moment. And then the private subnets that host the workspaces have a routing table that enables them to access the internet via the NAT instances that have been created in those 2 public subnets, but also allows them to enables them to access resources that might be located back on a corporate network via either a direct connect or VPN connection. This is a very common deployment model for workspaces, where customers don't want to build them in isolation. They want to give them access to services and applications that might be located back on a pre-existing corporate network or wide area network. It's very simple and possible to achieve that by using this sort of construct, and to achieve it in a very, very secure and well isolated manner. Once again, if you want to know more about that, take a look at the VPC documentation that you can access at aws.amazon.com/VPC. There's plenty of information there about how you can build and configure VPCs to match your security requirements and enable you to access services that might be located on a variety of different networks. That's not just actually for workspaces that we're talking about today, but actually for any service that you want to locate in the AWS cloud, the VPC is an important tool for doing that in a secure and connected manner. And the last thing to say about this is that you have full control over the routing tables and security policies that you apply to workspaces via VPC, which we've talked about, but also via EC2 security groups. And the 3 screenshots that you can see at the bottom here show how you can set up restricted internet access using one of those NAT instances that we've talked about. So you have a security group which is assigned to the workspaces that you create, named Amazon WorkSpaces Security Group, quite imaginatively. Then in the center, you can see that we've got another security group that we've applied to our NAT instances called WorkSpaces NAT Security Group. And what we're doing here is we're allowing all traffic from our workspaces or from members of our workspaces security group to access that NAT instance. So all traffic can transit between our subnets within our VPC and can travel from our workspaces to our NAT instance. And then over on the right-hand side, you can see that we've restricted outbound traffic from that NAT security group so that only SSH, HTTP or HTTPS traffic can travel from the NAT instance out to the internet. And what this means in practice is only the SSH protocol, the HTTP protocol and the HTTPS protocol will be permitted outbound from our workspaces, and nothing will be permitted inbound to them. And this is a mechanism for securing your workspaces using NAT as a border, together with security groups, software-based firewall rules that will restrict the amount and restrict the type of traffic that can flow between particular parts of your AWS infrastructure. And you can see there how we've used that to secure our workspaces, in fact to restrict what they can access on the internet or which protocols they can access on the internet, and also prevent actually any traffic from reaching them outbound in. So you've got some really powerful controls that you can apply to workspaces in order to secure them. Let's move on now and take a look at Active Directory integration. So this is for connecting your workspaces to a pre-existing Active Directory. And use this or achieve this using the AD Connector directory type, which you would have seen earlier when we set up our simple AD. If we visit the other option or select the other option, which is the AD Connector, it allows us to create a gateway to our on-premises Active Directory, and it enables our on-premises Active Directory users to access Amazon Workspaces. And you've taken to this setup page if you select that, and here you will enter the configuration details of your on-premises Active Directory. So you're going to, for example, select a globally unique name for your organization. You're going to select the fully qualified name of your on-premises directory in DNS, a NetBIOS name for your on-premises directory, then give an account username and password in your on-premises directory, a DNS address of at least one DNS server in your on-premises directory, and then you're going to provide the familiar VPC details that you will have seen previously. Once you've done that, you'll review that directory information, make any changes, click Create AD Connector, and in the same way as the simple directory took a few minutes to be created, the connector will take a few minutes to be created. The status will change to active, and you're then able to provision workspaces users from a user list that will be delivered from your Active Directory into your pre-existing Active Directory into that Create User screen that you saw earlier. Now there's some further documentation on this which is beyond the scope of this session today really. But if you do want full details on how you can prepare to use an AD connector to connect the AWS directory service to your on-premises directory and provide internet access for workspaces, then check out the 3 links that you can see there. They provide comprehensive details of the prerequisites, comprehensive details of the ports and routing details that you need to set up in order to access your on-premises directory, and further details on how you can provide internet access to workspaces that might be provisioned using an on-premises directory. So check out those 3 links for that. There's a comprehensive set of prereqs and also a walkthrough explaining precisely how to set up an AD connector for your workspaces to integrate them with a pre-existing on-premises Active Directory infrastructure. Taking a look now at Amazon Zocalo Sync, and this is a service, a client application actually, that installs within an Amazon workspace for a user. Provides continuous and automatic backup, so it enables you to synchronize documents across clients that might be PCs or Macintosh clients, and make those documents available within your workspace, for example, for a kind of desktop disaster recovery environment where you might lose access to your laptop or desktop for some reason. Maybe your building's not accessible or your device has been stolen or damaged. You can have a workspace which is effectively on standby with your documents synchronized into it. It will log into that workspace and find that your documents are available for you to work on in the event that you either lose or can no longer access your desktop or laptop client. So it's a very useful tool. Actually, many of the team here at AWS use it in that way, working on our laptops but having our documents synchronized into workspaces, so that if we do have a problem with our laptop or we lose access to it for any reason, we don't have to let down any customers. We can still access the documents that we need to work on from a workspace, and still obviously make sure that we meet customer expectations for delivering services or delivering documents to them. So it's a really useful tool to use for DR from that perspective. And this service is enabled or disabled on a per directory basis. You may recall when we set up our simple directory earlier on, we enabled Amazon Zocalo sync for that directory, and all users within that directory would therefore be allowed to use this service. And of course, you can create multiple directories if you wish to do that, in order to partition users if you wish to split your user base and not give Zocalo synchronization access to all of your users. It's very simple to install a client, and you can of course find out more details about that on the Amazon WorkSpaces product detail page, which we'll show you a link to at the end of the session today. Another reasonably recently announced feature is Amazon WorkSpaces Golden Images, and this allows you to create customized golden images that form a baseline, essentially, that users' workspaces will be created from. So you can add or remove applications or set configurations within these golden images, and that will provide an environment, a baseline environment, which is appropriate for your needs. You may have a particular application build that you want to provide. For example, we were talking earlier about using Amazon WorkSpaces to service communities of developers that might be either working within your organization or working for third parties on your behalf. You could, for example, create workspaces that were pre-configured with, say, Microsoft Visual Studio and access to source control or application lifecycle development management tools that you may want to use. Create a bundle which contains that software, and then use that as a golden image that you would launch new workspaces from for developers that you wish to work with that tooling that you'd defined. So it's a very simple process to take an existing workspace and create from that, use that as a baseline from which you create a golden image which you can create additional workspaces. It's kind of similar to snapshotting in many respects. And if you want to learn more about this and actually access a tutorial which will walk you through the process for creating a bundle, there's actually two ways you can do that. The first is to take a look at the URL that you can see on the bottom left of this slide. And actually, if you download the materials from today's webinar, you can just click these URLs in the PDF and it will open up for you. I've also included this particular URL in the links panel for the webinar today, so you can access it directly from the links panel if you want to take a look at it, learn a little bit more about how you can create customized bundles that you will then create workspaces from. And the second way you can do that is to take a look at Jeff Barr's blog post on the topic from the 28th of August. You're going to have to scroll back quite a few pages through the AWS blog to find it, because we just had reInvent and we had an awful lot of new services announced during reInvent, which meant an awful lot of blog posts for Jeff to write and post. But if you scroll back a little bit, you'll find this on the 28th of October. Jeff wrote up a tutorial explaining with a worked example how you would create a workspaces golden image and make that available for other users as a baseline workspaces environment for them to use. So either take a look at the blog or take a look at the bundle tutorial that you can access either from that URL or from the links panel in the webinar interface, and find out more about creating workspaces golden images. It's quite a new feature, but it's one of the most requested features when we launched workspaces early this year. And as you'll know, AWS are always working on features that our users tell us should be priorities, that customers tell us should be priorities, and that's what we've done in this particular case. And similarly, if the features that you feel would be helpful for you in Amazon Workspaces, then please visit the Amazon Workspaces forum on the AWS website and provide us with some guidance as to what you might like us to see implement in the service next, which features would be most valuable for you. As we get more feedback like that, we're better able to steer our roadmap and make sure that we more accurately meet the needs of customers over time. So if you do have feedback or features that you feel we should add to this service, please let us know and we can get our teams working on that. You may see your feature request implemented in the very near future. That's all we have for you today in terms of content. As you'll probably appreciate, Amazon WorkSpaces is a very simple service to use. So it's rather a short masterclass today because we've covered actually every single feature of the service there in sufficient detail to do more than get you started with it, but get you started with it and working with it quite effectively. And we've done that in just under 40 minutes. So it's not a very complex service. It's a service which is intended to make it simple for IT administrators to create desktop environments for their users. It's not a service which at the moment is burdened with a lot of features because we don't have that many features that are required in order to provide that service. If you want to learn more about the features that we have covered, then check out the Amazon WorkSpaces product page that you can see at the top there. The WorkSpaces frequently asked questions includes additional detail on actually a couple of features that we didn't cover. Using multi-factor authentication tokens with WorkSpaces, that's covered in some detail in the frequently asked questions. As is printing locally from WorkSpaces. So if you're accessing WorkSpaces from Windows PC, you can use a local printer and print from WorkSpaces directly to a local printer attached to your system, which obviously is a very useful feature in some use cases. So check those additional details out in the frequently asked questions, as well as further references and detail about everything that we've covered during today's Masterclass webinar. The Getting Started guide is available, of course, and that will walk you through the demo that we showed you, a walkthrough that we showed you today, and help you repeat that for yourself, and provide some links also about configuring your workspaces within a VPC, a virtual private cloud. And lastly, there's a little bit more detail available in this breakout session from the AWS Summit London 2014, which took place earlier this year, a SlideShare presentation created by my colleague Glenn Robinson on the Solutions Architecture team here in the UK. You can check that out. Check that out if you want to see some further slides about workspaces. That might be helpful for you. So just to quickly summarize, Amazon WorkSpaces is a simple to use managed desktop service that provides desktops in the cloud. It supports multiple devices, traditional desktop operating systems, tablet devices and zero clients. It's secure and available, making use of the VPC construct for security, keeping your data in a centralized location, of course allowing you to deploy your workspaces across multiple availability zones within an AWS region, assuring good performance and also that your workspaces will remain available when your users need them. It integrates into your corporate directory if you wish to do so using that AD connector which we showed you, and you can find more details about that in the links that we showed you during the presentation today. There's zero upfront investment and a monthly fee for the service, and a variety of different software and hardware bundles are available for your users, so you can match the software and hardware performance requirements that you have with your budget, of course. Find out more at aws.amazon.com/workspaces, which is the top level product page for the service that we've covered today. And if you want to extend your AWS knowledge, maybe learn a little bit more about the VPC, for example, or some of the other AWS services that you can integrate with workspaces. It's a very common use case, for example, to run workspaces and as a desktop analytics environment, and to combine it with something like Amazon Redshift, our petabyte scale data warehouse, or with Amazon EMR, Elastic MapReduce, our managed Hadoop service. So you can run your analytics environment directly adjacent to your data, be that structured in Redshift or unstructured in EMR. You get very, very, very good performance for your analysts if you do that. If you want to learn more about those other services, why don't you check out some of the training offerings that you can see here. aws.amazon.com/training has full details of AWS classroom courses, which take place around the world at very regular intervals. You can find out more about certification on Amazon Web Services at aws.amazon.com/certification. And we have a number of self-paced labs that are available free of charge for users to familiarize themselves with AWS services as well. You can find those at the URL that you can see on the left side of the screen right now. And that concludes everything we have for you today. As I said, if you want to stay up to date with AWS here in the UK and Ireland, then please follow us at AWS_UKI. That includes full details on our webinar program and in-person events that we're running around the UK very regularly. So if you want to keep up to date with AWS, then find us at AWS_UKI here in the UK and Ireland. If you want to stay up to date with AWS globally for news and announcements, new services, new customer case studies, new features that we might be launching, then find us at AWS Cloud, also on Twitter. And you can find me at Ian M if you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing in the evangelism team. Also communicating quite extensively on my own Twitter about AWS user groups, which we have a number of around the UK and elsewhere in Europe. So if you're interested in joining and participating in an AWS user group, why don't you follow me on Twitter, and you can stay up to date with what's happening with AWS user groups events around the UK. Something that I'm very interested in. I think it's a great resource for AWS users. Get a bit of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing going. You probably learn more from another AWS user than you will from AWS in many cases. So user groups are a great way to meet and network with other AWS users around the UK and actually around the world as well. So thanks for joining us today. We're going to take a few questions now that have been submitted during the session today. Just follow up a few of those verbally with a few answers. If we have some interesting questions that have been asked, we'll turn to those now. So thanks for joining us today. Please download the materials and please keep an eye out for the email that will point you to the SlideShare and YouTube recording of this webinar. We'll take a look at a few questions. Thank you. Bye-bye.